Hey, what's up, everyone? It's your man, Sean Zattel. Just got done watching the Richardson Hitchens Edgar Berlanga doubleheader from New York City just now. Finishing up a fun day at the Paradise Cove here in Southern California, LA area, Malibu technically. And finishing up a birthday weekend for my sister-in-law. Shout out to her. We love you. Anyways, on to the fights. Richardson Hitchens is sharp. He's very sharp. We all know that about him if we've been watching him and paying attention to him since he arrived at the championship level. Every performance he's had since going life or death with Gustavo Lemos, he's shown class. He's shown he's a very sharp, fast, educated, good boxer on the outside. And he had a very solid performance tonight in his debut at welterweight after that debacle, with Oscar Duarte and that fight falling through in February. And Hitchens, he looks sharp at 147. He's definitely, world champion level. But man, some of the glazing on the commentary was crazy. I mean, he's getting compared to Terrence Crawford when he fought Breedis Prescott. He's getting compared to Andre Ward when he fought Mikkel Kessler and Carl Froch. He's getting compared to Pernell Whitaker. Max is in the same breath after saying all that is saying, well, a lot of guys don't get stoppages anymore because the fights aren't 15 rounds. And man, Shakur Stevenson, I pick him against anybody, but they essentially saying the one guy that would probably have the best chance is Richardson Hitchens. And it's like, really, based off going 10 rounds with Ricardo Salas and winning every round. I feel a little bit like Devin Haney when Brian Norman was telling him he had knocked out Derek Cuevas, Giovanni Santillan, and Jin Sasaki, where he's like, I don't know those guys, and he was being dead serious. I didn't know Ricardo Salas. Now that might be because I'm not good enough at my job, probably true, but also I just didn't know who he is. That doesn't mean at 24-3 now with 18 knockouts and one draw that Ricardo Salas isn't a hard puncher or isn't a durable, sturdy Mexican fighter. He is all those things, but point being, it's not Andre Ward beating decisively world champions, a Hall of Famer in Carl Froch, a guy who's on the ballot in Arthur Abraham, another guy who's on the ballot in Mikkel Kessler. It's not the same thing. And you can hear Andre Ward saying for rounds that if he wants to make a statement, he needs to step it up and get a stoppage. Hitchens, after the fight, said he hurt his hand. But, it was a really solid showing. I mean, again, fast hands, very sharp. But it was just kind of ridiculous. And the adjectives being described by both Tessitore and Kellerman, sensational, next level, masterful, sublime, masterclass, all this stuff. And it's like he's just doing what he's supposed to do. And really, what would really be exemplary is stepping it up, putting some combinations together, hurting him, dropping him, stopping him, and all these rationalizations for why it's just a solid performance and not all those other adjectives they used to describe it. But anyways, Max is still always going to be one of the greatest that ever did it. Someone I look up to still great at what he does, in spots, but it was just the hard sell was just ridiculous about it. So Richardson Hitchens, very good outing at 147. Nothing about that performance screamed, like Max is saying, he's the biggest threat to Shakur Stevenson, ahead of guys like Devin and Ryan and Keyshawn, etc. Just wasn't like Hitchens did something so dynamic and creative and spectacular that made you say, wow, this is the guy of the welterweight division. It was just a good performance. He's a very sharp boxer and remains undefeated. Brooklyn stand-up. Salute to Richardson Hitchens. He handled his business. And then in the main event, it was a hell of a fight. It was actually a pretty great shootout for 6 or 7 rounds between Edgar Berlanga and Stephen Butler. Stephen Butler could crack, and he dropped Edgar Berlanga in the second round. Berlanga responded well, took over the fight from there, hurt Stephen Butler multiple times, and then stops him in the 7th round in an awkward kind of stoppage. Butler was on Bambi legs a half dozen times after dropping Edgar Berlanga with a right hand in the second round. But for the referee to jump in right when they're in the middle of the exchange, and Butler had just landed a right hand a couple seconds before, landed a left hook in the exchange. Berlanga was getting the better of the exchange. Butler was, again, getting badly hurt in that fight repeatedly, but just an awkward time to jump in when both fighters are landing punches at the exchanges. Butler kind of gets tackled by the ref. Berlanga doing a punk move, standing over him like he's going to hit him again when clearly the fight has been stopped. You know, that's street Brooklyn shit, but it is what it is. Kind of like Zab Judah did to Floyd, you know, low blowing him, hitting the back of the head. And actually, it's not that egregious because he didn't actually commit any penalties. He was just kind of doing a performative, I'll fuck you up, you know, kind of tough guy thing. But Berlanga wasn't a punk tonight because to get off the canvas, knock his man out, stop his man in the shootout in a very entertaining fight, I give him credit. And Berlanga's a very, very solid B-level fighter. You know, he may never be world champion. I wouldn't favor him to be. Him and Mabili would be fun, though. Him and Christian Mabili would be a war. But he's a good athlete. He had a very good jab tonight. It's just he's chinny. He's chinny. He has very good power. He had a good jab, good speed. He's a solid athlete, but he's chinny, and it's not like he's some defensive wizard to make up for it. And he's got solid skills and a good jab, good speed, and good power. But he's not a great feinter. He's a solid counter puncher, but not a super savvy, crafty kind of fighter. But he's a very solid B-level fighter. You know, he can crack, and he's a solid athlete. And in this level, very exciting. Stephen Butler could crack too. So, you know, I give him credit for winning this fight by knockout. And he could continue to be a fun fighter to watch, especially at this level. I don't think he beats Pacheco. We saw what happened with Hamza Shiraz. We already saw what happened with Canelo. But, you know, him and Mabili would be a war. Lester Martinez, I favor Lester Martinez over him, but it'd be an interesting fight, you know. So you could still put, he's definitely a bona fide top 10 super middleweight in the world. So I give him credit for tonight's performance, but we know his deficiencies. But still 29, we'll see where he goes forward from here. And then on another note, seeing Nico Ali Walsh, I haven't even watched the whole segment, but I knew once Nico was tweeting earlier in the week, and, you know, and I like Nico, and I covered him since his pro debut. I know Amir Abdullah as well, but the minute I saw Nico tweeting about the Ali Act earlier in the week, I went, you know, he's gonna either willingly or unknowingly gonna be co-opted by TKO's efforts, because to me, it's running adjacent right now with what Paramount is running into with their Warner Brothers Discovery merger, where it's thought it's just going to get pushed through, and then they're hitting hurdles and actually getting it pushed through. There's different politicians pushing up against it, and now that merger has been delayed to 2027, and they're running into more roadblocks than they probably could have foreseen, and pushing through Paramount, which of course is broadcasting the fights tonight, with Warner Brothers Discovery. For example of how that's a microcosm in boxing. Right now, when DAZN TNT is supposed to be competing with Zuffa on Paramount, they, in this merger, would all be under one umbrella. And that's anti-competitive, antitrust kind of practices in the United States. And that's why it's being blockaded right now from actually being passed as a merger. So similarly, in another vein, the Ali Act, by a company that's been sued for antitrust, yada, yada, I think they've ran into more hurdles than they thought they would. So having a widow of Muhammad Ali, maybe not enough PR firepower. So what could be better than that? Flipping the grandson of Muhammad Ali, who is an active fighter, to then support. And Nico may be thinking he's doing a good thing. Well, they're going to pass it anyways, so let me, you know, get some amendments in there that could have protections for fighters and whatnot. You know, just let it die on a vine. Say, hey, they already signed the best American fighter in the world, right? Shakur Stevenson. They already gave him a bunch of money. You know, you're talking about wanting to protect the fighters. It's all good. Shakur just made the most money he's ever made in his career under the current legislation, and you're putting on shows in Madison Square Garden now, right? You're gonna have Ryan Garcia versus Conor Benn at T-Mobile Arena, cross-promotional fights happening. So, you know, you're good, right? You could take over the game with or without this, right? Okay, so then don't get it changed on behalf of some foreign backing and all this stuff. Just go out there and win the ball game. Go out there and dominate, TKO. So, you know, let it die on the vine, because that's maybe where it was headed. But really, it's just, you're going to be used as a tool to amend it so it can actually get passed through Congress, or excuse me, the Senate, pass it through the political process that it needs to be amended and changed. So the minute he tweeted about earlier this week, I was like, that's suspicious, because it's losing momentum. And the better way to go about it would be to let it die on the vine. I'm sure he would argue, no, they're going to pass it anyway, so I got to make a stand and get changes put in there that are going to protect fighters. But beyond the protecting fighters and the fighter pay and all that, I've continued to say for over a year or two, like 2 years now, that this whole thing is deeper than boxing. And what would be my case in point? I believe in this past week, the United States has just passed a uranium deal with Saudi Arabia that's going to allow them to have nuclear capabilities. So them giving the president a plane again. Fuck the Democrats, fuck the Republicans. I'm not saying this as some bushy-haired liberal walking around here in LA. I'm being down the middle and caring about my country, the United States. And for some powerful guys at TKO, Ari Emanuel and Epstein and Mark Shapiro and Dana White, their underboss, and Nick Khan. When I saw Nick Khan and with Amir Abdullah and Nico Ali Walsh, I was like, yeah, this is what I suspect. And then sure enough, Nico's on the broadcast. But for Saudi to be, they're a part of this merger from Warner Brothers Discovery and Paramount. They own 60% of Zuffa Boxing. They're buying up a lot of media in the United States, as is Israel. Israeli backers like the Ellisons, who are the big shareholders and owners of this Paramount Skydance thing that they're trying to merge with Warner Brothers, being backed by the Gulf countries and themselves, of course. So long story short, though, it's deeper than boxing. You're giving the country that is still in court right now for 9/11 nuclear capabilities. And right at the same time, they're taking over boxing in the United States with some other political forces that I just mentioned. And you're not supposed to change U.S. legislature on the behest of a foreign entity backed company like that. If Zuffa wants to run the game and they got enough money and resources and intellectual might to just drive out Eddie Hearn and PBC and Top Rank and all that, then so be it. Fair game. But you're supposed to draw a line with all this stuff going on deeper than boxing. As boxing's a microcosm of bigger geopolitical economic forces having big influence, foreign influence on the United States. I'm supposed to care about that, but you know what? I've rambled about it too long. Do you, boxing? Do you? I'm just calling it. I'm just saying. And I get it. A lot of people don't give a shit. That's very apparent, and that's fine. Richardson Hitchens was very sharp at 147, but his performance was being overstated. And Edgar Berlanga is what he is, but he was fun as fuck to watch tonight. And I give him credit for getting a knockout in a shootout. So overall, pretty solid doubleheader. That's it from LA. Keep it locked in on the channel. Peace.